In the quiet suburbs of Dallas, Texas, a monster lurked, unseen and unexpected. A man named Billy Chemirmir. Hailing from the lush landscapes of Kenya, Billy Chemirmir was not always known as a monster. Born into a life of relative normality, he was raised amid the hustle and bustle of everyday Kenyan life. His childhood and adolescence were unremarkable, devoid of the chilling traits one might expect in a future predator. In the early years of the 21st century, Chemirmir made a life-altering decision. He left his homeland and headed westward to the United States, seeking what many immigrants yearn for: a fresh start, a new life, and a chance to pursue the American dream. And for a while it seemed that Chemirmir had found just that. He established himself in Dallas, Texas, carving out a seemingly ordinary existence in the heartland of America. As a healthcare worker in senior living communities, Chemirmir was viewed as a beacon of care and support. He was the one who provided comfort to the elderly, a friendly face in their twilight years. He was trusted, respected, and even loved by those who knew him. On the surface, he was a paragon of kindness and care, a far cry from the monster he would later reveal himself to be. His work brought him into the homes and lives of some of the most vulnerable individuals. Elderly women who trusted him, who saw in him a compassionate caregiver, were oblivious to the lurking danger. This stark contrast between his outward persona and the horrific acts he was capable of is what makes his story so chillingly fascinating. But behind the facade of a healthcare worker, Chemirmir harbored a dark secret that would soon send shockwaves across the country. A secret so terrible, so unimaginable, that it would forever tarnish his image as a caregiver and expose the true monster that dwelled within. And as his unsuspecting victims fell prey to his nefarious deeds, the quiet suburbs of Dallas would soon awaken to a reality far more terrifying than anything they could have ever imagined. Around 2016, something sinister began to unfold. Elderly women in the Dallas area started dying under mysterious circumstances. Under the shroud of innocence, a monster was at work. Billy Chemirmir, a Kenyan immigrant, was working as a healthcare provider, a position that placed him in the homes of vulnerable elderly women. But Chemirmir was no ordinary healthcare worker. He had a dark secret. Chemirmir had a modus operandi that was as cold as it was cunning. He would gain the trust of his victims, offering comforting words and a helping hand. But behind this facade of kindness, he was meticulously planning their demise. He would smother his victims with a pillow, a method so silent, so swift that it would leave no trace of struggle. Once his victims were silenced, he would rob them of their most precious possessions, their jewelry, their heirlooms, the tokens of their life stories. As the weeks turned into months and the months into years, the death toll began to rise. One after another, elderly women were found lifeless in their homes, their valuables missing. The string of unexplained deaths baffled the Dallas community. Fear gripped the hearts of the elderly, their homes no longer the safe havens they once were. The police were baffled. The community was in shock. The families of the victims were left with nothing but questions. Who could commit such heinous crimes? Who could rob these women of their last breaths, their last moments? The answer was hiding in plain sight, masquerading as a caregiver, a friend. Chemirmir was not just a healthcare worker. He was a predator, a wolf in sheep's clothing. He exploited his position to prey on the most vulnerable, the most trusting. He took advantage of their kindness, their trust, and their solitude. And he did it all with a smile on his face, a mask of innocence that hid his true nature. As the body count rose, so did the questions. Who was behind these heinous crimes? The answer would shock everyone. In March 2018, the trail of terror finally ended. Chemirmir was arrested and charged with capital murder. The web of fear and uncertainty that had been spun around a string of unexplained deaths began to unravel. The invisible monster, Billy Chemirmir, was finally cornered, his murderous spree brought to an abrupt halt. His capture was as unexpected as his crimes. He was caught in the act, attempting to suffocate another elderly woman. It was her bravery and quick thinking that saved her life and ended his reign of horror. A simple phone call to her son, a whisper of fear, and the wheels of justice began to turn. Once in custody, the enormity of Chemirmir's crimes began to emerge. The police and investigators, following the trail of breadcrumbs, started to connect the dots. A picture of a serial killer began to form. Each piece of evidence, each testimony, each tear shed, painted a chilling portrait of a man who had used charm and cunning to lure his victims into his deadly trap. The investigation that followed his arrest was painstakingly thorough. It led to a grim realization. Chemirmir was linked to numerous other deaths, each one a tragic story of a life cruelly snuffed out. But with his arrest, the nightmare was over. Chemirmir's reign of terror was over, but the impact of his crimes was just beginning to be understood. In a shocking twist, Billy Chemirmir was found dead in his cell in September 19, 2023. This unforeseen turn of events left many questions unanswered, and the investigations into his heinous crimes continued. Authorities were left to piece together the puzzle of a man who had become a nightmare for the elderly community. Chemirmir's death did little to ease the pain of his victims' families, who were left grappling with the loss of their loved ones. Their grief was compounded by the knowledge that their mothers, grandmothers, and sisters had fallen prey to such a monstrous individual. The fallout of his crimes rippled through the wider community as well. The safety of our elderly loved ones, once taken for granted, became a subject of concern. Chemirmir's reign of terror forced many to confront the grim reality that our most vulnerable can so easily become targets. Yet, despite the darkness, there were glimmers of resilience. Families of the victims banded together, finding strength in shared sorrow. They became advocates for change, pushing for increased safety measures in senior living communities and demanding justice for their loved ones. Billy Chemirmir, a name that will forever be etched in infamy, serves as a chilling reminder of the monsters that can hide in plain sight. His story urges us all to remain vigilant, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, and to ensure that such atrocities are never repeated.